everyone, and thank you for being here. Earlier today, officers from Salt Lake City Police Department, the Unified Police Department, and the Sheriff's Department began an unprecedented joint operation in the Rio Grande neighborhood. After weeks of surveillance and undercover efforts, law enforcement personnel began arresting individuals engaged in illegal activity in this area. After arrest, these individuals will be directed either to the county jail, immediate crisis intervention programs like the ER or detox, or to a temporary receiving center set up at the Barnes Bank building. Those individuals directed to the receiving center will be booked, provided with indigent defense, and most importantly, further assessed toward the goal of diverting eligible individuals to behavioral health treatment opportunities, which Mayor Ben McAdams will explain in greater detail. To be clear, these individuals arrested for violent offenses, those with open violent warrants, sex offenders, and those identified through surveillance as drug manufacturers or distributors will immediately be taken to jail. Sheriff Jim Winder, who has played a vital role in this effort, has committed jail space not subject to current booking restrictions and overflow release. The sheriff will speak more on this part of the operation shortly. Planning for this operation began in June and would not have been possible without $1.2 million commitment from the county, along with funding allocated by the Salt Lake City Council. It would also not be possible without community partners who will be providing the necessary services. Mayor Ben McAdams, District Attorney Sim Gill, Chief Mike Brown, Sheriff Jim Winder, and myself all understand the crisis situation in the Rio Grande neighborhood, and we are all committed to finding new and lasting solutions to the criminal activity and health concerns in that neighborhood. This is not a traditional sweep of the neighborhood, which has been tried before. This is a collaborative partnership between service providers and law enforcement agencies. This is a targeted action with strong criminal and behavioral health components to back it up. And it will not be a one-time effort. Guiding our conversations over the last few months have been the goals of having an immediate impact on the health and safety of the Rio Grande neighborhood, while diverting those better served in treatment out of the criminal justice system. To the residents of Salt Lake City, I want to once again state my commitment to find new and collaborative ways to deal with some of the most pressing issues we face in our city. This is not business as usual. Chief Brown, who I am immensely grateful for his time and his effort in leading this operation with Sheriff Jim Winder, has already doubled police patrols in every neighborhood in our city and continues to work with partners to disrupt criminal activity throughout our city. I think it is also important to say, while this effort is a critical move, residents and businesses in the area will undoubtedly continue to experience some criminal activity. We understand this. We are testing a new model, and we will analyze and review our outcomes and determine what our next steps will be. Actions like today's must be combined with continuing efforts to draw down numbers near the road home, so the criminal element is easier to spot, to track, and arrest. and those in need are given the stability they need and deserve. Strategic operations like this one take time, collaboration, and commitment. I am grateful to our community partners, as well as the county and state, but mostly I am grateful to the residents of Salt Lake City for your support as we work to resolve the issues that have evolved over many years. I now want to turn the time over to Mayor Ben McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor, and everyone for being here today. So what you are seeing today is a strong commitment from Salt Lake City and from Salt Lake County on a response to concerns about public safety in parts of our downtown. We are too used to seeing on the television news and in the newspapers reports about assaults, stabbings, and shootings in that area. The public doesn't feel safe. Our businesses are negatively affected, and many vulnerable people, such as those who are experiencing homelessness, are targets of crime. And all of this must stop. Today, we are taking action. In a nutshell, what we're doing is we are arresting and sending to jail the criminals who need to be prosecuted, and we're also arranging for those who need help because they suffer from drug or alcohol addiction or mental health issues, for them to have a chance for treatment and support for recovery. It's to the credit of our law enforcement leaders. Chief Brown, thank you. Sheriff Winder, thank you. Our criminal justice staff, led by Keely Grafone, who's here today. Keely, where are you? I know she's here. Keely, our district attorney's office, Sim Gill, and our behavioral health division, Tim Whalen, who's here today also, and an incredible network of private behavioral health treatment providers. It's credit to them that this action today is possible. We all realize that without collaborating, the complex nature of this situation won't be handled in a way that gives us any better outcomes than what we've seen in the past. I supported, and I know Sheriff Winder and others supported, the state legislature's changes to the Utah criminal justice system known as the Justice Reinvestment Initiative, and we still support it. However, any change of this scale has unintended consequences and a domino effect throughout our entire system, and we are seeing that today. JRI reduced penalties for certain drug crimes, allowing those who were convicted to serve shorter sentences and avoid passing through the state prison system. Overall, that's a good thing, but it has had ripple effects throughout the entire county criminal justice system. Post-JRI, and it started about 1 year ago, we have seen a 209% increase in Class A misdemeanor crimes, which are now handled by county jails or county-based diversion and supervision programs. Today's action is how we are beginning to deal with these increases and changes. This law enforcement action today is the first time that we've been able to comprehensively include jail diversion treatment as an alternative to jail. So for those arrested in the downtown where drug crimes are all too evident, this will have a positive impact for our businesses and our residents. We're providing an appropriate place for officers to transport these folks, and we have professionals on hand to attend to their needs. One reason that this is possible, this diversion system, where we're looking at those people who need to go to jail will go to jail. Those who need help and need treatment will be offered as an alternative to jail a robust treatment program that they can enter today. One reason that this is possible is that the city and the county have committed over $1.2 million in one-time funding, time-limited funding. We've committed these dollars to offer immediate access to treatment from licensed medical professionals for up to 6 months. So there is the question of what will happen when these one-time funds are expended. And we're having conversations with the state. Many of you are aware that in the last session, Mayor Biskupski and I supported legislation that passed our legislature for an extension of Medicaid benefits that's now pending before federal agencies to determine some certain waivers that may need to be given in order for us to receive this benefit. This benefit would, if coming through, will help us to extend this program beyond just the 6 months that we have one-time funding available. So we hope to see that come through. If that doesn't come through, we would hope that the state legislature would consider the funding that they've appropriated for that federal match to go to programs like this until such time that a federal waiver can come through to extend this program indefinitely. We know that the homeless population and the criminal justice system population have significant overlap. We know that criminals prey on homeless individuals in the downtown area, and they jeopardize our public's safety. We've learned from national data that serious mental illness, substance use, or both may affect up to half of all adults who are in our shelter today. So in our shelter system, that means hundreds of people are affected and need this help. Homelessness and criminal justice go hand in hand, and we must tackle both issues together. And that's what this effort is about today, is about bringing together a vision, not just for criminal justice and law enforcement, but recognize the need for behavioral health treatment. I want to thank the dedicated men and women in local law enforcement who put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. I want to thank Mayor Biskupski for her collaboration on this, and I want to acknowledge the financial commitment from Salt Lake County Council for the funding, and to highlight Tim Whalen, who is here, and his staff for managing their funds in a way and their resources in a way, including private providers, in a way that we have the resources available today to expand these treatment options to people in need and to give county residents who need them on-demand treatment options. And I want to thank Sim Gill for ensuring that our criminal justice system can address both the hardened criminals that should be prosecuted and also those individuals with substance use and mental health needs that need access to treatment. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I want to thank the leadership, Mayor Biskupski, Mayor McAdams, Sheriff Winter, Speaker Hughes, and DA Sim Gill. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for your partnership. As we start and as we continue through this unprecedented outreach that is happening today, the women and men The women and men of the Salt Lake City Police Department are one part of the whole community that is compassionate and looking for solutions to the human plight. A man isn't defined by what others think of him, but by what he thinks of himself. Each one of the people we encounter yesterday, today, and tomorrow is a human, a mother, a father, a son, and a daughter. We are all human. We want to help where we can, alongside the community, to humanize their plight. No longer can the police department be the Swiss Army knife of social reform. It's time for the community to focus on alternative avenues, holistic rehabilitation, and significant social work. What is happening today is unprecedented. It is the first and most significant step in our community working together to help others. I have said time and time again that we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. It does not work for us, and it certainly does not work for those who need access to other opportunities. Community solidarity is coming together to make a better community. Together, we can do some, but when we join forces, we do more. Community-supported policing is the heart of this direction. This plan and is a durable platform for sustained action. Each member of the Salt Lake City Police Department is responsible for achieving its mission, owning the outcome, and providing consideration for unique circumstances. Likewise, the community, in solidarity and shared vision, has a stake in the outcome, provides bottom-up contributions and shares responsibility for making this city both safer and more enjoyable for everyone. We want to be a part of a community that recognizes humans as individuals and helps them achieve their potential. Our goal here today was to start that process, to work in concert with medical professionals, social workers, our law enforcement partners, UPD and the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, and the justice system to provide alternatives. It is the hardest first step, but we came together to do it the right way. With that, I'd like to turn the time over and thank Sheriff Jim Winter, my colleague and friend, to talk about what you've done today. Thank you.
Mike, I appreciate that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I, too, want to thank all of the partners that have been engaged in this, what really is a dynamic and a very nuanced and a very novel approach. The issue in the Rio Grande is a crisis. And that is a term that I don't think many of us use very lightly. I think every citizen in Salt Lake County and perhaps statewide sees the activity and the goings-on in that area, and they wonder why. And immediately when people are confused and wonder why, there tends to be a lot of finger pointing. People want to blame. They want to say, why isn't this person doing that, and why didn't that person do this? The reality is the problems that are existing in the Rio Grande do not occur overnight. We are seeing the culmination of what is multiple years of a circumstance that is to some extent beyond the control of any one individual entity. Finally, I think that we have, as leadership, have come together and recognized that the only solution is one that is a combined solution. We've sat down and ironed out a plan that is, as I said, extremely novel. It is unique. It is an approach that has not been done before, and we are in the learning phase. The approach that we have undertaken is one in which we identify individuals that are engaged in activity in the Rio Grande, not as a mass, not as a group of a bunch of homeless people, but rather as individuals and individual subgroups. Who is dealing drugs? Who is purchasing drugs? Who is mentally ill? Who has a substance abuse disorder? And within those subcategories, which individuals overlap within those categories? That is a very complex discussion, and one that requires, as the chief said, not the services of law enforcement, but of mental health and social service professionals. The idea that law enforcement in and of itself is going to go down and solve what is in fact a social problem is naive at best and dooms any law enforcement agency to failure. Instead, what we have come to recognize through the collective efforts of everybody here is that what we're really dealing with is a situation that many of us can relate to. Imagine going into your child's school and going into a classroom where special needs kids were, the high performers, children that had average academic abilities, all those different individuals were in one class, and they informed you that they were now going to teach them all in exactly the same way under the same circumstances, and that every child would be responsible to the same levels of education and discipline. You would immediately and intuitively know that that is an unthinkable approach. And yet here is what we're doing with a group of individuals that have come to this city for a variety of reasons, and we're going to put them all in one room and treat them the same way. It is outrageous. Jail is not the only solution. In fact, in many instances, it is the worst possible solution. Instead, what is the right solution is to identify that individual based on their individual needs. Today, we have over 100 individuals that are in a receiving center that is the model for the approach that we want to put in place in the upcoming decades. We are looking at constructing a new facility, a several $60 or $70 million facility in the near term. Imagine if we built that facility using the same approaches that we have been using for the past 30 or 40 years. We would fill it up with masses of individuals that have not been properly identified, diagnosed, or separated. This is an experiment, and to the mayor's statement, the citizens should not expect that they wake up tomorrow and this situation is evaporated. That too is naive. What is going on here is hard, diligent work to identify what approaches will work. Some will not. Some of what we are engaging in today will not be successful. Much of what we will be engaging in will be highly successful, and what I can promise you, it will be much more successful than what we have been doing over the past many years. And that is not an indictment of any one individual entity. That is a collective indictment. When one says criminal justice system, it means just that. It is a system that involves political leadership, prosecution, mental health, social services, the community leaders, business leaders, and the citizens that live and work and arrive in this particular area. I could not be more thrilled about the operation that we have undertaken, and over the course of the last few months, we have seen some of the closest interaction between our agencies that we have seen in my time in elected office. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you, collectively, we are striving to find a new approach to a situation that none of us individually created and none of us individually can solve. I hope that the community is patient, and more importantly, I hope that they are willing to engage with these novel and, in some instances, confusing approaches to criminal justice intervention here in the Salt Lake area, a community that is our capital city and affects the other 1.2 million human beings that live in this valley, and more importantly, the people that live in this state. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, very excited to be here. My name is Sim Gill. I'm the Salt Lake County District Attorney, and I'm also the Salt Lake City Prosecutor. So it's really exciting because I have my mayor over here, and I have my mayor over here, and I have my law enforcement partners over here as well, and of course our legislative leadership as well. Speaker here. And,
Notice he's right behind your back.
That's right. That's right. And I'm glad that he's here. And this is really exciting for me for a lot of reasons. I've committed my all professional life from when I came out of law school to doing criminal prosecution. And as I was thinking about the last several months when we had this unprecedented collaboration and to the execution of our operation today, I couldn't help but think that in 1994, when I was a line prosecutor, we were having exactly the same conversation. And we were talking about these issues that were a challenge to us systemically. And from 1994 to 95, going forward, we've made different kinds of efforts. And we've expended different kinds of resources. But in 2016, we're in a fundamentally different place. As the sheriff mentioned, we have a challenging and a crisis issue in our community. But why I'm hopeful is that I have mayors here from the city and the county who are committed to this. I have leadership from law enforcement who are committed to it. I have leadership from legislature who understands that these are the same formulas are no longer going to be feasible for us. For 20 years, we've been talking about criminal justice reform. And when we talk about criminal justice reform in a systemic way, it means the entire community, every stakeholder has to come together. And we can talk about it in an academic sense, but I can tell you for the last several months, it's been my privilege to actually participate with passionate, committed leadership that actually wants to do something substantive in our community. And there was one consensus understanding. The old way of doing business was no longer an acceptable methodology. This is a multi-jurisdictional, interagency, collaborative response. We cannot jail people and hope that we will solve this problem, as Chief Brown said. A therapeutic justice approach is a compassionate approach to understanding everybody on an individual level. But let's not confuse that we have individuals who come there who also are predatory and prey upon those who are in dire need and in support of services. And when you have this melange of people who come together, it's a crisis for us in our community. You know, as one of my colleagues used, and I'm going to borrow his phrase, when you have lions interacting with gazelles, you have to separate out the gazelles from the lions. You have to get the help to the gazelles in a safe place, and you have to secure the lions so they are no longer predatory. And that's what this operation is about. It is not something that is going to be solved overnight, but it is a committed investment of resources into our community. Something that we take very seriously on an individual level of those who are mentally ill, who need substance abuse, should not simply be incarcerated or become simply a status crime. But at the same time, those who are predatory and who are profiteering off those who are more vulnerable need to be strictly held accountable. And that is what this objective today is. And it is about addressing the issues which we no longer can, about chronic homelessness, about the need for Medicaid support and Medicaid expansion, because right now, if we were to look at somewhere between 68 to 72% of our people at the county jail could benefit from that. And we need to address that issue holistically and politically. We also need to recognize that substance abuse and mental illness should not be an indictment to the criminal justice, simply as a pathway to the criminal justice system. So what we're doing as a part of this operation, as the city prosecutor, we're taking the misdemeanor cases through our justice court system, and we're diverting those that we can. As a district attorney, we're taking on those felony level offenses, and those we can, at the first level of prosecutorial discretion, working with data-driven decision-making, and with beds that have been made available from behavioral health, we are diverting those into immediate treatment. Those who have serious offenses and those who would want to come down and congregate in our community and exploit those individuals' vulnerabilities, we are going to aggressively prosecute. And this is not something just an incidental issue for us. This is an 18 to 36-month commitment from both of my offices, from the city prosecutor's office and from the district attorney's office. And the totality of the cases that come out of here will be very individually handled, both for the purposes of treatment, for engagement, for bringing them back, and those that need to be aggressively prosecuted will be seen for full prosecution and post-prosecution follow-up. That is the commitment of safety to our community. That is the commitment of compassionate care to our community. And it is a commitment of leadership, that there is no differences amongst any of us here. We're coming here collectively, we're coming here jointly, and we're going to, in one joint effort, respond to the needs of our community. And this is something that we have committed to each other on an ongoing basis. So as a line prosecutor from 1994-95 to being here today with a collection of these colleagues here, this is actually one of the most exciting days for me, and it's just an absolute honor to be a part of this process, and for the first time, really taking seriously with our resources and our individual portfolios, making a commitment to the expectations of our community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Speaker Hughes. My role today has been as an observer. The state of Utah has entered into this space. The bill sponsor for our homeless initiative, Representative Francis Gibson, is with me today. He's our House Majority Whip. And this is a place where, as it's been talked about right now, a collaborative effort. This has been a bipartisan collaborative effort, but I thought it was very important for Representative Gibson and myself to be downtown as this was going on, to be here at the receiving center, to watch the collaborative efforts that are taking place, because as we were talking earlier today, sometimes in politics it's more about turf than the actual issues that you're trying to address. And what you're seeing here, I think, is unique. And I think when we come together in a bipartisan way, when you see multiple jurisdictions coming together to tackle a specific problem, we should take note of that, and we should be pretty proud that that's happening. I think as a state, there's a lot that we are taking on. My majority whip's from Utah County, and we're standing here in Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County. And he has busted a pick to convince every single one of our colleagues across this state that this issue isn't unique to this city or even this county. And so it's important for us to be here and to watch the good work that's going on, but to also realize there's a lot more that has to be done. We hope what we don't see is just a reprieve or just a slowdown from a massive and a thorough effort here today, but something that will derive data, that will be shared with policymakers, that we know the finite dollars that our state budget has and the high competition for those dollars, that there are worthwhile and important appropriations and priorities we make from the things that you're doing here today. And we do that together. And so really, we're just, we're glad as a state and a state legislature to be here, to watch this process. But I have to say, and we say this in our caucus and we say this to colleagues, if it were important and easy to do, it's already been done. Someone already got to do that. The only things we have in front of us are the important things that are very hard to do. This is an incredibly difficult space, and there's going to be a lot of critics along the way. And so what I hope we do from this moment forward, and as you share this to the public, is that there's more work to be done, but the good sign is that we're all coming together in an important way. And I thought that the state and our participation in our initiative that Representative Gibson sponsored, we need to see ourselves as state lawmakers that we're making that great progress. And so I want to commend all of those, the leaders that you see in front of you right now. Those good things are happening. Just finally, let me just say this. We have wolves amongst the most vulnerable of this state. And when we talk about the kind of crimes that are going on, when you see strollers that are in immediate proximity of some of these violent crimes and some of the things that are going on, we collectively as a state have to get to the point where it is absolutely unacceptable, and we have this on the front burner as an issue that we are not going to withdraw from, even if it's hard, and that we are going to move forward in. And I think that the criminal element, at least the things that we were seeing and discussing as lawmakers today, is far more sophisticated than I think people appreciate. I think some people look at this area and think there's this primal action and reaction that goes on. I think there's something far more complicated than that. I was impressed by the efforts today that have been very surgical and very careful in terms of how people are brought in if they've needed treatment. But those that are the true wolves, those that truly do deserve to be prosecuted to the ends of the law, the lengths of the law. And I see that determination here today, and I'm proud to see the operation that's happened. So good to be here. Thanks for all the work that you do. Thanks.
Mayor, can I ask a couple questions? Sure. How many people have been arrested so far?
Mike, do you want to
Scale
come
and
in?
scope
Jim?
of this?
So far, I believe it's about 25 individuals. Is it 47?
47
Okay.
Those are the ones who are going to jail.
Is that both? Okay.
total. So
So
some of
47,
those
so
will
some
be
of those
diverted.
So some of those will go to the diversionary programs for treatment and Many of those will. rehabilitation, and then others will be going to jail.
Right.
What are the arrests range from? I mean, what are the charges?
Anywhere from most likely public intoxication, trying to solicit or buy drugs, to dealing drugs. So it really runs the whole gambit of different charges down there.
And again, if you recall, there will be some felony arrests that are warrants. So you'll see some warrant arrests happening as we identify open warrants that are out there and individuals that are tied to those.
So I would add, what's unprecedented about this is, under the way we would typically do business, those people would be taken straight to the jail, booked into jail, oftentimes due to overcrowding releases would be released from jail if they're just simply in possession or some of the other misdemeanor offenses. In this case, we have jail beds to hold them that are not subject to the overcrowding releases, but we also have treatment beds. And so they're being presented with the option of, you know, if we've assessed them and determined that they're eligible and the treatment would be a good option for them, they're presented with the option that in lieu of prosecution and incarceration, there is a treatment option that's immediately available to them. There are long wait lists generally for treatment. We have dedicated treatment beds that are available on demand today. What do you say is the criticism that you guys are just trying to hug your way out of this problem?
Oh.
Let me just sort of say, well, first of all, compassion and doing the right thing for the right reason for the person who is mentally ill or substance abuse, both data and research tells you treatment is a better outcome than incarceration. But let me be absolutely clear that if you're a violent offender and you've said that you're going to come down to in this geographic location and you're going to hide amongst this crowd and that there's going to be simply as business as usual, those days are gone. I can absolutely assure you that if you're a violent offender and you're part of this operation, you will be arrested, you will be prosecuted, you will be jailed, and if necessary, you'll be sent to prison. So let's be very clear. Nobody's compromising on public safety or public prosecution. But it would be madness to think that business as usual of simply not using what data tells us and what research confirms for us is that you can get a better return on investment by providing treatment to the mentally ill, substance abuse treatment, inpatient beds. They cost money, but on the whole, they give you better return on investments. So you can talk about hugging, you can talk about whatever, compassion, and with data and research, but now compromise on public safety.
We know there's been an open-air drug market down there for a long time. Why did it take this long for this to happen?
Jump up here, Jim.
Why don't you both step in?
Yeah.
We've known it I've been with the Salt Lake City Police Department for 26 years. I think the open air drug market in that area and around that part of the city has been there for probably 50 to 75 years. So we have, throughout my career, spent exhaustive time, resource, and efforts down there. I think right now, we are, with the JRI restrictions and the things that the sheriff is facing in the jail side of the house, we just can't arrest people and incarcerate them. We need to look at healing people and making them whole again, rather than try to arrest an addict and think we're going to correct them or fix them in incarceration.
Well, and I think to the question directly, I think the problem has become significantly worse. And to suggest, from my standpoint anyway, that this is exactly the same levels of activity that we have seen, I mean, I disagree with that. I think that there has been a significant influx here recently, and I think that there also is a very unique circumstance, as the speaker indicated, in which there becomes this kind of interesting reality where the nature of the population in the area becomes used as a screen to some extent, and it becomes a more viable place for the kinds of activities you're talking about. I mean, we all live in neighborhoods where there's a problem house, and it starts off with a few kids having a party, and the next thing you know, it's a bigger party, and before you know it, the house is a real problem, and the neighbors are complaining about it. And the same question could be posed very there. When do you take action? Many people are tolerant, and not in a negative way, about trying to see if this is going to resolve itself in other ways. This has not resolved itself. It has become more aggravated. And the other piece that needs to be recognized is that the very targeted nature of the approach has to be understood. It does neither of us any good to arrest 30 of those people with a big net. It does us much better job to arrest 10 of this problem, 5 of that problem, 7 of this problem, when we know that we can move them into the appropriate channels. That is a complicated approach, and it does, and the criticism may be fair. It requires significant intellectual and political and financial wherewithal to get all those lanes opened up appropriately. And that's, again, the reality of resource allocation. We are dealing with finite resources. It is now, I think, at the forefront where we have recognized that we have to do this in a smarter approach, given the volume that is going on. So again, I think the criticism is fair. I hope that what we will begin to realize is that moving forward, we have to see what strategies work given the new reality.
What do the sweeps look like on the ground? I mean, how are officers approaching people?
With all due respect, I will take umbrage with the term sweep, because what a sweep suggests is this concept where we go in with who we can find and put in a police car. That is not what is going on in any way, shape, or form. What is going on in this is there was significant identification of what we believed were some of the problems that not only needed to be addressed, but that could be addressed. And I hope you understand the difference in that. Remember that the county, Human Services, through Tim Whalen's shop, with the support of everybody here, lined up beds for one of the first times we can go down and grab an individual whose predominant criminogenic issue is a heroin addiction. You bring that person to the jail on a minor offense, that individual is going to be processed and released. Does it solve anything relative to the heroin problem? No, they're going to be immediately back in the environment, which is one of the criticisms we have. Today, ladies and gentlemen, that individual is being transported over and going through an assessment that is as complicated as any assessment in the country. After going through the assessment, they are offered the opportunity to go directly to a treatment bed that has been paid for an extended period of time, and there are individuals waiting there to begin to provide pharmacological support, medical support to that individual. Imagine now if you're a heroin junkie and you've been down there on these streets for weeks and months, and it's this cycle of arrest over and over again, and now you're taken into a place where someone says, hey, you know, last time you were in jail, you had to wait 9 months for a treatment bed. How would you like to go in 10 minutes? And for the first time, we're going to see from people, will they take that or will they not? Those are choices that the chief and I don't make. Those are choices that individuals make. If they take it, will they sustain it? Is that treatment going to resolve some of these problems? That is a paradigm shift, and I hate the word paradigm, but it is really a tectonic alteration of what's going on. So to your point, lining up all of that he said they can't be a Swiss Army knife. None of us can. We had to bring the knife together and build the doggone thing.
And to your point, you mentioned sweeps. Sweeps don't work. Look, 90s, early 90s, early 2000s, we have done a lot of sweeps in that area. We have arrested and arrested and arrested people. I remember 4 and 5 day sweeps. Well, we called up Jim and said, Jim, we're doing a sweep. we're doing an operation, and we brought hundreds of people to the jail, thinking from a law enforcement's perspective, we were doing our very best.
That's right.
We were taking these people into custody, they were drug users, they were drug sellers, and we were putting them in jail to fix them. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, before you, the chief just hit on it. People think the jail's the fixing place.
It's not.
You don't bring a person to jail to fix them. You bring a person to jail to incapacitate them, and then you line up another option. And we've been saying this over and over again, that without those options, they simply rotate out and back. And you cannot blame the cop on the street for trying to resolve a problem on the front end, right? When a business owner's out there saying, get that man off the front of my porch because he's defecating, or shooting up heroin in front of me, that officer's responsibility is to arrest him right then and take him. And with their expectation that they'd go to some magic place to be fixed. Well, I'm telling you, we've got the fixing people now on board. Do we have enough of it? No. Is it going to be the only solution that's going to be applied? No. But I'll tell you what, for once, the officers are realizing that when they take their people in there, something's going to be behind the magic door.
And to the officer's frustration, I just want to point out something that is so critically different about this operation. When we arrest somebody for possession of heroin, we're talking to an addict. They have to have that drug to stay well. Right now, that's a Class A misdemeanor. We take the information, we seize the drugs, possibly a car, and then we say, you need to appear in court to talk with Sim Gill and that side of the house. Our frustration is they now are back on the street. There's no arrest. They're right back on the street. And so if they don't show up, it'll go to warrant status. And guess what? It's a Class A warrant. And guess what? They don't go to jail. And so it's a perpetual cycle that nothing happens. And that's what's so important about this operation, is every cylinder of the criminal justice system is hitting today. And this is the model that we want to perfect, and this is the model that this community needs to go forward.
That's
Let
right.
me just add
Yes, Sim needs
just
to-
one last thing. So what the sheriff talked about is, so you go through this process. The other part of the equation is, yes, we can't compel somebody into treatment, and they may leave, and they may come back. And we're going to follow through that. And that's when I talk about that 18 to 36-month commitment, it's the commitment then for us to prosecute and follow through, re-engage. They go off, we bring them back in. And it's not losing that person as one more statistical person who's lost in that equation. It's about providing that continuity of care. It's about the continuity of accountability. It's about saying that individual matters, but that person has to take some ownership and responsibility, but they cannot do so if you don't provide them the treatment beds and if you don't have sustained follow-through systemically. And that is the fundamental commitment that we're also making with that person. So as the sheriff said, if you come down here and you have to wait 9 months and we can't hold you, then our commitment to treatment is out the window. It's just window dressing. But if you can make that bed available immediately, or if that person wants to test the system, because look, the system is going to say, hey, they treated me differently, now there's going to be no follow-up. And what I'm saying to you is that we have made a systemic commitment to follow through that person to make sure that they're accountable. And let me have Tim just briefly talk about the scope of the treatment that we're providing for the providers here.
So I'm Tim Whalen. I'm the Behavioral Health Director for Salt Lake County. It's not a hug-a-thug when we know and data supports and evidence supports that if we get these folks into treatment, first we do a very good assessment to determine their criminogenic behavior and what's going on in their lives. We understand what their charges have been. If we assess these individuals accurately, we get them into treatment, we get them into recovery very often, and they become tax-paying citizens again. I want to start out, these are family members. We have the 4th highest rate of opiate abuse in our country today. Those individuals typically start on prescription abuse based on a pain issue. These are individuals that run through those prescriptions, can't get them filled. They go down to this area to get heroin because it's cheap, it's available, and they are addicted. These are children. These are relationships. Many of these individuals you have known or have known in your lives. We have the most complex network of providers set up today. I can't tell you the months of planning, the support of the mayors, both Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, the district attorneys, law enforcement. These guys understand that issue and they know we can help these folks. I have 10 additional beds at Detox. I have 30 residential beds available at Odyssey House. Folks are arriving in those treatment beds right now as we speak. I have 20 residential beds at First Step House. I have Project Reality available with 4 doctors to do an intake, provide medication-assisted treatment to diminish their craving and withdrawal and support them as they go to treatment. I have support from the University of Utah, the hospital, and the receiving center. I have support from the University of Utah Assessment and Referral Services. I have outpatient services through Valley Behavioral Health, clinical consultants, Family Counseling Center. All of these agencies have come together and worked together to coordinate this. I just got a text from the director of First Step House about an hour ago. The client arrived. He said, I think I had God on my side today. He's in a safe spot. He's been living on the street, and he's addicted to heroin. These are the kinds of faces that we're dealing with, and I'm very, very proud to work with city and county leadership that support this. You don't see this in very many jurisdictions. In many jurisdictions, the behavioral health director doesn't know their sheriff or district attorney and does not have the opportunity to implement this kind of program. So I believe you will have outcome. Will we have challenges? Absolutely. But we will have positive outcomes for many of these individuals' lives. Thanks.
Mayor Biskupski, you said that this isn't the first time or the last time that this will happen. So how many of these are you planning? Is this any sense of how much of a regular occurrence these things like Operation Diversion?
You know, obviously, we can't share too much information. It would put law enforcement in danger as we do this work. So I think it's important for us to keep certain facts to ourselves, but for people to understand very clearly that this isn't a one-day deal.
Can you talk about the facility that was mentioned earlier that you're anticipating constructing?
Jim?
Yeah, I certainly will. And to answer that question, I want to just go back one step a little bit because, and again, the theme here, trust me, your frustration is our frustration with this, the idea. Many people in our community do not believe that treatment and therapy works. I mean, let's be frank. I deal with this all the time. We deal with it in many circumstances. And the reality is, and I don't know. You can look at literature on one side that says if you do the following, you're going to have the outcomes. You can look on literature on the other side that says that it's a waste of time. What we're doing here too is trying to answer exactly the very questions that you're asking, and that is, look, if we, for the first time ever in my criminal justice career, we're literally saying, let's try it. Let's literally take a person and put them into these, through these paces. That's why the district attorney said we're 18 months out, so to speak, because all of these individuals that are going through this particular operation will be tracked empirically. We're going to take a peek and see what does and doesn't work. Now, to your point, another reason to do that is we're on the precipice in Salt Lake County of, we know we have to build another facility. There's just no question about it. We need additional beds. Now, the question becomes is that what kinds of beds would be the best to have? Again, I'll go back to my education analogy. Should we build a preschool? Should we build an elementary? Should we build a high school? We got to find out what the capabilities, of our demographic are. This is an absolute incredible opportunity to do the modeling that we think is going to work in the big building on a small scale. And we plan on doing them several times so that we can get that data. And I know people will say, well, are you experimenting with people's lives? Well, hell yeah, we are. But guess what? We got the world's biggest experiment going on down there right now, and we've tried a bunch of other options that didn't work. So before we go build the new multi-million-dollar facility that Salt Lake County has already allocated developmental monies for, and that we are in the process of working on the physical structure and the flow of, our leadership has indicated that they want some empirical analysis. We've already got planning and project management personnel in place for the project. If all goes well, we will start putting shovels in the ground, I hope, in about 2 years. And then you can imagine it's probably a 2 to 3 year build out from that. That facility will be very unique.
Is this just for those that have addiction issues, or is this a homeless shelter type place?
Those are great questions. And the answer is this. We know that the Adult Detention Center, which was built in 1999, and had a medium maximum security bed capability. We know that it's not meeting the needs. 25% of the individuals in that facility right now are persistently mentally ill, seriously persistently mentally ill. That facility was never built for that. Another high percentage have these chronic substance abuse related issues. Yet we're putting them in a building that was built for bad guys. Now, every data set you'll ever hear says that's not the right approach to do, but it's the only game we have. Okay, so what we're trying to do is to build this next facility that is going to address the needs that the city has found themselves in the middle of having here, which is a new population that nobody ever, I guess, expected, but they're here. So the question becomes is, we got to build another 400 to 600 beds for these human beings, and they got to be targeted beds. They need to be addressing the specific needs. So until we reach out and start getting into the weeds on the data set, and there's a lot of big brains over there working in this facility that we have, much smarter than I. And as we conclude these operations, not only do we think it's going to have a physical and visible impact on the downtown area, which everybody's screaming for, but the next thing it's going to do is provide us some data sets for next steps. And to the speaker's point, I'm not going to stand here and tell you what the next steps need to be. We got to find out what has to happen, rather than stand here and tell you we know it all, because I'm telling you we don't. Now that maybe is a negative note to fall on here, but expectations have to be set appropriately that this is a very interesting and complex issue.
Mayors, how does this factor into the homeless shelter site selection issues? Does this play into that as far as where you put the new shelters that you want to create? Do you be smaller facilities and spreading it out?
I don't think the two are linked at all. Site selection is its own process that started even before I became mayor. And that is a completely separate group of individuals who've been at the table working on site selection criteria and how to build a facility that will actually serve the population that would be inside of a new resource center. So very different conversations, very different and different players at the table, but again, very collaborative, very thoughtful. Community was very involved in that criteria and what to do with that criteria, how to prioritize those. So as you look for potential sites, that criteria was used. And sites are our next step for the two new resource centers.
What I would add is I think they are very different conversations, although they are mutually supportive in the sense that the vision for homeless services is to transition from a model that we have today where I believe our focus is to alleviate suffering by providing food and shelter to people in crisis. The new model is one where we provide access to treatment to help individuals become more stable and self-reliant. Alleviating suffering is something that happens as a means to the end, but not the end in and of itself. So the vision to have smaller facilities that service core populations and recognize their distinct needs and not treat them as a one-size-fits-all of people who need a bed and a meal, but as people who have underlying causes that need to be seen and diagnosed and treated, this is part of that. And so the vision is very much aligned, and the new facilities that we're talking about, we've been looking at, as has been said, at this intervention for many, many months, and knowing that at the root of our system we have to diagnose and treat underlying causes of crisis. Many of the people who we're talking about today are not homeless. Many of them are. So there's a big overlap, but that's the system and the direction we're moving in. So it's very consistent. The site selection is a different process, but the vision is very consistent.
Yeah.
We're going to do one more question,
Question
and
in the
then everyone
back.
will be available
Go ahead.
for one-on-ones in the lobby.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just looking for details. You talked about 47 people arrested. Can you give a time frame? And I also wanted to know, I think he covered it, but how many beds? And I think there are 52 beds. And then you have a jail designation area. So what's the expectation here?
Just correction, it's 36 arrests right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lex
36.
Bell's fired. He gave me the wrong number. I just wanted you to know that.
So is that the 36 including the people who will be diverted?
That's right.
Altogether.
That's right.
Altogether.
That's right. And the question on the jail beds, I'll be honest with you, we're maintaining that for operational security reasons. It's a significant number of beds that we have dedicated for the operation.
Under 150?
I'm not going to tell you.
And then when were these arrests made?
Beginning, the operation commenced early this morning, and beginning about 7:30 is when we began to see the first folks in our receiving center. But the operation, as the chief indicated, has been a much more robust. There was a lot of pre-work prior to that.
And there are still aspects of the operation going on now, okay?
I just got to clarify, 52 residential beds, 10 new detox beds, and really unlimited ability to receive outpatient, up-to-date treatment type services we're able to place. So it's not just the 52.
And what is the homeless population down there, do you know?
Okay. I'll just, that was part of the other, very good question, because one of the issues that we are dealing with here, and again, I think it's a very important factor, is understanding the demographic makeup of that area, because that question gets posed over and over again, and that is, again, a complicated one, because who is homeless, who is not, what are some of the other elements, and we need to understand that.
And to that point, I know that the road home sleeps about 1,000 people per night. And from our bike officers and the officers that work down and around there, we estimate there's probably that many more that are shelter resistant. So we're probably talking of a population between 15 to 2,000 people in and amongst that area.
And let me just, I would be remiss not to just state this. Let me be very clear. Being homeless is not a crime, okay? This is not what this is about. It's about recognizing a deficit that we may have systemically, whether it's in the criminal justice system or a social justice issue. It's identifying that and getting the data set for that. So I want to be very clear that we're not communicating that being homeless is a crime and this is a criminal justice action against homeless people. That would completely undermine and miss what we're trying to talk about. What we're saying is that we have deficits within our community. And some of those deficits are mental health issue, some of them are substance abuse issues, and then there are commingled with that people who would prey on homeless people and exacerbate that problem in our community. And we need to be able to separate those individuals out, hold them accountable, and make access available as a matter of social justice to those who are finding themselves in lack of resources. From a fiscal perspective, from a systemic perspective, if we do not address and identify all of those needs, then we're just being delusional. But I want to be very clear here. This is not about saying that this is an action against homeless people, and anybody who states it that way would be misleading in that. So let me be very clear.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll be available for some individual questions out in the lobby. Thank you.